Hey there, Peyton here again, and welcome back. If you're just finding this, though, I would encourage you to start with part one. We covered the theology, the personal journey, and the science of the pineal gland, the inner eye, the receiver. And we ended with this. If the pineal is the receiver, keeping it clear isn't optional. It's the whole practice. And now I want to show you what the ancients already knew and how to protect that window and what most of us are doing every single night that closes it completely. Here's what gets me every time I sit with this. Three completely separate traditions, Chinese, Egyptian, and a 19th century Serbian inventor who was openly contemptuous of mysticism, all arrived at the exact same understanding about what happens in the human body at night. The Taoist masters described the body as a kind of internal factory, running on a 7-day rhythm. During the first few days, raw materials accumulate, hormones, minerals, concentrated life force energy they call Jing. By the middle of the week, the body has begun refining that material, and on day 7, if the conditions are right, something ignites, a channel opens, and that accumulated energy moves upward through the spine toward the brain. They called this pathway the microcosmic orbit, and they were meticulous about one thing above all else. What happens in the last hour before sleep determines whether that energy becomes power or simply dissipates. The Egyptians had their own map of the same territory. They called the spine the Jed pillar, the backbone of Osiris. And they believed that during sleep, the vital life force, what they called Ka, traveled upward through the Jed to meet the Ba, the soul, at the third eye. When Ka and Ba united during sleep, the person awoke with something they called Heka, the ability to speak things into existence, to move through the world with a kind of magnetism that others could feel but not explain. And then there's Tesla. Nikola Tesla never once claimed to be spiritual. He was a scientist, an engineer, a man obsessed with measurement and proof. And yet every single night, he practiced what he described as mental building. Lying down in the dark, holding a complete vision of his current invention in his mind with total precision, then surrendering into sleep. He wrote in his autobiography that he could mentally run a motor for a week, disassemble it in his mind, and find wear on the exact components. And when he built the physical version and disassembled that, the wear matched perfectly. His greatest breakthroughs didn't come at his workbench. They came in that borderline state, the threshold between waking and sleep, what neuroscience today calls the hypnagogic window. The moment when the analytical mind finally gets out of the way and something deeper, something connected begins to work. 3 different cultures, 3 different centuries, one understanding. The body has a nightly window, and what you do before sleep determines whether that window opens or stays closed. The Taoists had a metaphor I can't shake. They said, imagine your body fills up like a bathtub every day. Warm, concentrated, creative life force energy. By midnight, it's full. By 1 in the morning, the body is ready to send that energy upward. But most people have holes in their bathtub, and the water drains before it ever reaches the level it needs to. Here are the 5 leaks, and I mean that practically. I've had to look at every single one of these in my own life. Leak 1, excessive sensory stimulation. How that translates today, I see as screens after dark. The blue light coming off of your phone, your laptop, your TV doesn't just entertain you, it passes through your retina and hits a structure in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your master biological clock. And that clock tells your pineal gland it's still daytime. Hold the melatonin. So the factory that was supposed to be running at full capacity at 1 in the morning doesn't even start until 2 or 3. By the time your body tries to move energy upward, the window has already closed. This is almost embarrassingly simple, and it might be the most impactful thing I've done. Your pineal gland needs complete, total, uncompromising darkness to function at capacity. Not mostly dark, not dim, dark. The LED on your phone charger, the standby light on your TV, the glow of a street lamp through thin curtains. Research from Harvard Medical School found that even dim light during sleep reduces melatonin output by more than 50%. Half of your nightly restoration gone. because of a blinking green light. The Egyptian temple priests slept in chambers built underground, no windows, no light sources, absolute darkness. And they reported consistently visions, downloads, solutions arriving whole, communication with what they called the gods. They weren't communicating with external gods. They were experiencing what happens when the pineal gland runs at full capacity, without interference. I now sleep with a quality eye mask, and not as an afterthought, but as a deliberate practice, because I don't always have control over my environment, but I can always control what reaches my eyes. That mask is part of my nightly practice now. I've even gone through the steps to train my late night bathroom trips by keeping the mask on and making it there and back without any stub toes or bleeding shins. This isn't about willpower, it's chemistry. Leak 2, excessive noise and draining speech. The Taoists were very specific about this in a way that feels almost radical by modern standards. They taught that your senses are gates, and every gate left wide open lets energy out. Sound is one of the most penetrating of those gates. Loud music, aggressive media, the constant churn of notifications, arguments, content that keeps the nervous system in a low-grade state of alarm, all of it costs you something. Not metaphorically, energetically. The body has to process everything that enters through the ears, and processing takes fuel. But then they went a step further than just the noise. They also spoke about speech itself as a form of energetic expenditure, excessive talking, venting without resolution, conversation that goes in circles, words spoken from anxiety or the need to fill silence, drain the same reservoir that your body is trying to build. There's a reason most serious contemplative traditions include periods of silence. It isn't punishment, it's conservation. I've started paying attention to how I feel after an evening of loud environments or prolonged draining conversation versus an evening that was quiet and intentional. The difference in my morning meditation is not subtle. What you let in through your ears and what you send out through your mouth matters more than most people realize. Words matter. The gate works both ways. Those external sights and sounds drain mental energy. Leak 3, excessive indulgence with food, like eating within 3 hours of sleep. When you eat late, your body has to choose, and it chooses digestion. The liver, which the Taoists considered the primary storehouse of life force energy, spends the night processing what you ate, instead of doing its deeper alchemical work. They had a saying, those who eat after sunset feed the body. Those who fast after sunset feed the spirit. I've felt the difference. Meditating after a light early day versus after a heavy late meal is not subtle. Leak 4, emotional chaos before bed, arguments, outrage scrolling, fear-based news, the mental loop of tomorrow's problems running on repeat. Every one of those states triggers cortisol, and cortisol is the direct chemical antagonist of everything we're talking about. When cortisol is elevated, melatonin is suppressed, testosterone drops. The body goes into survival mode. And survival mode doesn't build, it burns. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really the book of coming forth by day, or emerging forth into the light, describes the soul's nightly journey as passing through a series of guarded gates. To pass, the soul must arrive clean, free of heaviness. That's not poetry, that's cortisol. Leak 5, sexual energy released without intention. This is the one most people skip over, and I almost did too. But I've worked with this consciously enough now that I'm not going to pretend it isn't part of the conversation. The Taoists weren't promoting celibacy. They were promoting consciousness. There's a massive difference. They called the arts of conscious sexual energy Fang Zhangzhu, and they were precise about it. You can have a partner. You can experience pleasure. The variable is intention. The variable is where and how you direct that energy. The problem isn't release. The problem is unconscious release. Mindless stimulation that leads to arousal, that leads to discharge right before sleep, with no direction, no purpose, no awareness. Now come on. This is something that's all too common in today's day and age, and something that I struggled with for years, if I'm being honest. Something that severely stunted my productivity and my focus. When you do that, you drain the bathtub right at the moment the factory was about to use what it spent 7 days building. And your body has to start the whole cycle all over. This is also where I'll say working with the sacred secretion cycle is specifically where and why I made this change in my life. And it has given me a completely different relationship to this. When I'm in that window, I'm not trying to suppress anything. I'm consciously directing it. And what that does to meditation, to creative clarity, to the quality of what comes through is not something I can argue you into. You just have to experience it yourself. Everything I've described so far, the Taoist framework, the Egyptian map, Tesla's nightly ritual, they all converge in one place, the last hour before sleep. So here's what I actually do. An hour before I intend to sleep, screens go off, not dimmed, off. I treat that hour as a transition from the doing of the day to the being of the night. I sit, spine upright, both hands resting just below my navel. What the Taoists call the Dantian, the elixir field. What the Egyptians pointed to as the seat of vital force. What my body just knows as a place where something warm lives when I get still enough to feel it. And I breathe. In through the nose, belly expanding into my hands, out through the nose, full release. 5 minutes. Just that. Feeling the warmth, not directing it anywhere, just acknowledging that it's there. Then I give it a direction, not a visualization, not a picture of a big house or a winning lottery number, but a feeling, the felt sense of the life I'm in the process of building. What does my chest feel like when I know I'm on the right path? What does my face feel like? What does the space around my eyes feel like when I'm at peace with who I am? I hold that feeling 3 minutes without forcing anything. Then I lie down, eye mask on, complete darkness, and I stop trying. This is the hardest part. It took me the longest time to learn. The Taoists called it Wu Wei, doing through not doing, effortless action. You've sealed the energy, you've given it a direction. Now you hand it over to the part of you that actually knows how to build. Your conscious mind gets in the way of that work. So you got to let it go. And in that darkness, in that surrender, the pineal does what it was designed to do. Melatonin floods the system. The brain drops into its deepest, most generative state. And whatever was sealed in that moment before sleep begins to move through you. Sometimes intuition doesn't turn on. It becomes audible when everything else turns down. Seek that quiet, protect it. The signal is already there. And I don't share any of this as someone who's arrived. I share it as someone who is deeply, actively in the middle of this work. I don't get this perfect every time. It happens, life happens, throws curveballs that may derail me. But when I find something that works or several things that make an impact, I want to share it. If it helped me, maybe something in all of this can help you. Some of these are recommendations or techniques that I've read somewhere or I've come across that have had a measurable impact on my journey. They're choices I've made, practices I've stumbled through, shifts I've felt in my own body and in my own meditation. The channel is clearing, slowly, imperfectly, but clearing. And what I found on the other side of the static, even in glimpses, is worth every inconvenient change I've made. Because some of this really does take some effort. Christ consciousness is not behind a gate that only the right believers get to walk through. It is a frequency, broadcast continuously, available to every soul willing to get quiet enough to receive it. Yeshua didn't say, believe in me. He said, follow me. Walk this path. Love like this. Inhabit your body like this. Let the vessel be tuned for what it was made to carry. That's the invitation, not a religion, a practice. And it starts tonight, in the dark, with your hands on your belly, and something you finally let yourself feel. Thank you for listening. I know this was a long one. Hit subscribe, follow along, leave us a comment, and consider joining in on the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. I love you.